In 1879, when Hormuz Rassam carried out excavations for the British Museum in the foundations of the newly discovered Asagila temple in Mesopotamia, he could hardly have dared to dream that he would uncover an object whose political and cultural significance would continue to resonate 130 years later. Back in London, the cylinder was almost immediately established as the centerpiece of the British Museum's Persian display. A representation of Persia as the epicenter of a powerful yet tolerant empire. Its leader, King Cyrus, wise, charismatic, and humane. I'm Edward Alty. Hamid Reza was originally a student of mine, but we soon became good friends. So when he asked for a British opinion on the Cyrus Cylinder from someone who lives close to the British Museum, it aroused my curiosity. However, I must admit that until Hamid discussed his involvement in the project, I was almost wholly unaware of its existence. As a regular visitor to the British Museum for professional and personal reasons, I must have passed the cylinder on numerous occasions and hardly taken much notice of it, its physical insignificance truly belying its importance. Nevertheless, my online research quickly uncovered its cultural and political importance, and just the fact that it has been used as a political trophy by both the Shah and Ahmadinejad certainly secures its place at the top table of Persian artifacts. The Iranians that I had had contact with were naturally or understandably mistrustful of the Ahmadinejad regime. For my part, 1979 and the Islamic Revolution was the only watershed that I was aware of. Life under the Shah had been relatively good. The country was wealthy, Islam was practiced, but not used as a stick to beat its citizens with.
Here in the streets, the demonstrators are having everything their own way.
In 1979, the world was gripped by a new kind of revolution.
This is the man they call the father of the revolution, and this is the moment that millions in Iran have been waiting for.
And yet, if life had been so good, I couldn't get my head around why the Islamic Revolution had happened. Why did the people rise up against the Shah and install a fundamental regime in its place? I began to wonder, was it that life under the Shah had not been quite as wonderful as suggested? Perhaps the relative paradise of post-war Iran was rather more unpleasant and repressive than I had previously been aware of. Were the educated classes guilty of complacency? Did they never really believe that Khomeini would take over in such dramatic circumstances? And then, did the same thing happen in 2009? By being mistrustful and disenchanted with the speed of change, did they sidestep the election that allowed Ahmadinejad to gain power? Arguably the same disenfranchisement that George W. Bush took advantage of so disastrously in 2004. As a British person, this idea fascinates me. I have discovered that it is indisputable that the British influenced much of what happened in Iran in the 20th century. From sponsored coup d'etat to the requisitioning of oil to wield power, and regardless of conspiracies, Britain and Iran's recent history are inextricably intertwined. In the West, we have become accustomed to Iran being cast in the role of villain. So it's no wonder that for some Iranians, the Cyrus Cylinder represents a version of their nation that has the capacity to throw a more positive light on Iran than the current incarnation of power. A valuable counterpoint to the almost constant bad press that has dogged them over the last 30 years. For me, Cyrus and the present government could hardly be more contrasting. The cylinder's message of tolerance and dignity of spirit, the right of humans to exist and coexist without fear and persecution, is not only fundamental to my ethical standpoint, but, more importantly, central to the ideals of the Iranians that I have formed relationships with. This set of values could hardly be more contradistinct from what is being expounded by the current Iranian regime, so it is little wonder that we share a despair at what is being done to their country. Of course, many British people also share a despair for what is being done to their country. It seems to me that both Britons and Iranians have a degree of nostalgia for a past that may not have truly existed. Empire, power and culture loom large in their relationship with their national identity, a juxtaposition between modernity and tradition. I was described in Iranian cartoon of a revolutionary guard hanging, SAS style, outside an apartment, attempting to dismantle a satellite dish. The owner of the apartment is pleading with the guard. "Can't you come back tomorrow? Come dine with me" is on. I love this, a very Western context for a piece of fundamentalist madness. This ability to laugh at the absurdities of life is another tie that bind Britain and Iran. But what cannot be shared is a concept of suspicion and persecution. Suspicion of others outside one's immediate group for fear of being informed upon is where the two countries divide. Only groups in Britain who are genuinely up to no good live with that particular anxiety. In common with most countries, the relationship between politicians and diplomats bears little resemblance to how individuals on both sides feel about one another. While Iranians could be forgiven for a degree of paranoia when it comes to the British, on a one-to-one level, I have only encountered warmth, hospitality, and a large helping of curiosity on both sides. We ask each other questions about culture and history and politics. These questions gain pertinence as we send the Cyrus Cylinder off on its American tour. From the British Museum to the US, what do Iranians want it to say about them? That they are a peaceful and tolerant people? That being part of Bush's axis of evil is no more representative of them than Bush himself is of an intelligent American? Do they long for a leader like King Cyrus? The message, through his cylinder, of benevolence, tolerance, education and understanding endure as guiding principles for Britons, Iranians and Americans alike, as we search for identity and friendship in a frequently unsettling world.
and embassy personnel to each of whom a cover was assigned, so that the true nature of his job would not be exposed.
The United States is an imperialist power, and it's one of the characteristics of an imperialist power to plant spy dens and spy networks all over a country to control all its major political, social, economical systems.
زندگی
U.S. State Department messages concerning the CIA have been made public by the Iranians in the American embassy. These documents have been displayed on Iranian television.
Safe, get the filing cabinets, get it off. All 4 drawers, I want them shredded right now.
I'm gonna shred faster.
Shred the piece of plate. All 4. Anything else you see out there? Now just shred it. Got 10 minutes, let's go, let's go, let's go, everything.
Get the shredder.
Today, the United States, together with our close allies and partners, took an important first step toward a comprehensive solution that addresses our concerns with the Islamic Republic of Iran's nuclear program. For the first time in nearly a decade, we have halted the progress of the Iranian nuclear program, the Islamic Republic of Iran nuclear program, Iran enrichment, stockpiles, and nuclear weapons, Iran centrifuges enriching uranium, Iran new centrifuges, Iran will halt plutonium reactors, Iran's nuclear facilities, Iran building a nuclear weapon. Iran, like any nation, will benefit from rejoining the international community, and we can begin to chip away at the mistrust between our two nations.
I saw many peoples. I saw many cities. I saw plains and mountains. I saw the water and the dry land. I saw light and darkness. And I saw the plants in light, and I saw them in darkness. I saw the animals in light, and I saw them in darkness. And I saw mankind in light, and I saw him in darkness. I come from Kashan, but Kashan is no longer my town. My hometown has been lost. With feverish effort, I have built myself a house on the far side of the night. As for things military, is it not likely that they are worse than before in every way? Events make it clear, for enemies range about their country more easily than do friends. Cyrus, of course, stopped the practice of skirmishing at long range, putting breastplates on both his troops and their horses, and giving one spear to each. He made the battle be hand to hand. Now they neither skirmish at a distance, nor come together and do battle hand to hand. The infantry have shields, swords, and scimitars, just as if they were going to do battle in Cyrus's time. But they are not willing to fight at close range either.
Yeah. Welcome to Texas, ladies and gentlemen.
I say that the present Persians and their associates have been demonstrated to be more impious regarding gods, more irreverent regarding relatives, more unjust regarding others, and more unmanly in what pertains to war than were their predecessors. If someone is of an opposite judgment, he will find on considering their deeds that they bear witness to my words.
You killed my cousin back in 94. Fuck your truce. Now crawl your head in that noose. You wind up dead on the news. Ain't no peace treaty, just peace and PG's up to pre-approved. Bodies on top of bodies, Ivies on top of Ivies. Obviously, the covering up between the sheets like the Aussies. When you hop on that trolley.
All right, I'm Brooke Baldwin live here in Boston, but I want to take you straight to Houston where we're getting some breaking news. Apparently, a man has been shot near the ticketing area of the Houston Bush Intercontinental Airport.
Terminal B. Open range started shooting.
The first status update was posted nearly 24 hours before he was killed. I recently had the chance of staring death in the face, and she was beautiful, he wrote at 1:26 p.m. Wednesday. About 12:45 a.m. Thursday, he proclaimed that this life will crash tomorrow. And about 12:42 p.m. he posted, 45 minutes and 50 seconds in God's shadow and time stops. His timeline also includes a video of a strained and sorrowful spoken word piece called When I Go to Meet God. The lyrics include, what makes a mother's son decide that death is better than tomorrow? And this is not a life worth living. I already ruined it. And written on hotel stationery, here in the last hour, I yield to mercy when this could have turned bad. Jehovah found a path to my heart that love would conquer anger. The monster within me was getting stronger, and while I could not save myself, I could spare others. Redacted. Peace is within sight. I ask that authorities handle my disposal. Carnell Marcus Moore. I'll put up a boat and set it free off the shore. I'll let it take me away from this eerie land where nobody calls up the sleeping heroes from their long, lonely trance. Beyond the seas there is another land, its windows open to the virtues of lights. On its roofs doves constantly stare at the soar of human mind. Beyond the seas there is another land, people there. They care for the call of a gentle hill, for the feel of a brief dream. Beyond the seas, there is another land. Its dawn is weightless, vast and white, with the freshness of a bird's first flight. Its poets are heirs of water, wind, and light.
When I grow up, I'm going to be the great King Cyrus. I'm going to have the gold cylinder in my elbow. And I like about it because there is treasure inside the gold cylinder.
Dear Cyrus, I speak to you from Los Angeles, in America, where an emperor of industry, J. Paul Getty, once made his home. On the grounds of his ranch house, he commissioned a replica of the Roman Villa de Papiri, a palace in the Palisades devoted to the arts of antiquity. What opulent splendor, what pleasures they tell, these elegant relics spanning millennia. Good news, Cyrus. A proclamation you buried in Babylon was unearthed some 24 centuries after your passing. It was brought to the villa for a visit. Cyrus, here it is. What is called Manshura Kurosh, the Cyrus Cylinder. In fact, it's not a cylinder, but a small barrel, baked of clay and inscribed in rough-hewn cuneiform, pieces missing. What a story it tells, Cyrus. You, Marduk's elect, conqueror and guardian of Babylon. What a declaration. I am Cyrus, king of the universe, the great king, the powerful king, king of Babylon, king of Sumer and Akkad, king of the 4 quarters of the world, son of Kambiz, the great king, king of the city of Anshan, descendant of Teespes, the great king, king of the city of Anshan. You spoke of freeing Babylonians from their bonds, soothing their weariness. You declared a return of people to their settlements. You claim to have enabled all the lands to live in peace. And there are those among your admirers who claim the language of the Manshur as a declaration of human rights. And the story has taken hold. And your cylinder is famous, claimed by one Iranian regime after another. Look, the Manshur on a tin of Sohan, made in Iran and brought to Los Angeles. It bears the proprietor's surname, Saidiniya, which is my family name. I haven't met this Sohan maker. Is this some sort of sign, Cyrus? Cyrus, Angelinos came in droves to see the Manshur. More visitors to its exhibition than any other in the villa's history. Los Angeles, city and county, is its own sprawling empire of paths and towers and houses and horseless carriages. So many vehicles, so many roads, so much traffic. Among the millions in Los Angeles are hundreds of thousands of your people, Iranians, many of whom have prospered and flourished. Scores in affluent districts, on hillsides and in flats, in thousands upon thousands of lavishly appointed homes. Cyrus, in Xenophon's telling, you are insatiate of wealth. Is it true? Would you favor a Mercedes or BMW? Do rows of palms please you? Would you keep a beach house and gaze upon the tide of the largest of all seas? What would you make of this beach blanket Babylon? Cyrus, in the empire of consumption, the dollar is king, and the primary place of worship is the shopping mall. In a district of the county called the City of Commerce, a repurposed tire factory bears an ancient theme. Assyrian motifs, cousins of the Achaemenid, mark the facade and the lobby of this enormous bazaar. Winged figures atop and inside the building. What a noble visage for a sconce. Any style goes in LA's rowdy landscape. Traces of the Achaemenid dot the interiors of many homes, offices, restaurants, and shops. Cyrus, your cylinder lives in duplicate, as replica, and paperweight, earrings and cufflinks, and pendant after pendant after pendant. What wonders have emerged from advances in technology? Behold, Cyrus, a translucent Manshur bearing a plug, an electric cylinder, Cyrus, how it glows. The Manshur is an icon, you an idol. Look upon your likeness, Cyrus, gazing at the boulevard. Are the clothes right? Did you love gold? Would you bathe in splendor? Cyrus, your face adorns a bottle of bath gel. What a mustache, Cyrus. Was your musk sensual and smooth? Do you care for this label, the warrior collection, which includes Alexander, the emperor who brought your empire to a close? Alexander, who paid tribute at your tomb not once, but twice. Were the wars worth the spoils, Cyrus? Worth the blood? In Isaiah it is said that the Lord saith of Cyrus, He is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, Thou shalt be built, and to the temple, thy foundation shall be laid. Cyrus, you are declared a savior of the Jews, and their temples abound in Los Angeles. And your name is dearly loved, and carried aplenty. Cyrus, your namesakes are many. Cyrus, this is Kurosh, born in Iran, an information technologist. Cyrus, this is Cyrus, born in the east of this vast continent, a musician. Cyrus, this is my cousin, Shadi. This is her husband, Peter. This is their son, Cyrus. Cyrus speaks English and Persian. Listen, Cyrus.
من Cyrus'am.
Cyrus, this is Cyrus, born in Iran. Abadan, in fact, a Zoroastrian, an artist, a poet, who speaks in one breath of you and Ferdowsi and Khayyam. This is his helmet, made of metal, hand-painted, bearing ancient and modern motifs, declaring him Cyrus, son of Bibi. Cyrus, my father's mother, was named Bibi. Another coincidence. This Cyrus, old enough to be my father. And you, Cyrus, a father, an emperor, a warrior, a propagandist, a king, a conqueror, a person, a name. Kurosh. Cyrus. O Cyrus, hear this, Cyrus. Hear this, Cyrus.
We should be proud of Cyrus. We are Iranian and Persian because he was a king of love and wisdom to me.
The Cyrus Cylinder, an ancient artifact from Babylonia, is said to belong to the Persian king Cyrus the Great. In its inaugural U.S. tour, Washington, D.C. is the first stop. The Cyrus Cylinder is championed to be the first declaration of human rights. But is it? Many historians of ancient Iran disagree.
Why is this cylinder so important today, 2,600 years old? What does it mean today?
What it means is the first serious attempt that we know about running a society, a state, in which there are people of different nationalities and different faiths.
We shouldn't put words into Cyrus's mouth that aren't actually in the text.
A lot of things have been attributed to the Cyrus Cylinder that, in fact, are false. As Iranians, as Iranian Americans, again, as anyone who has any kind of identity with the Iranian heritage, it's also a way of recasting the civilization of Iran, of things Persianate in the contemporary period. It is a way of saying, look, we're not backwards, we're not terrorists, we're not this, we're not all those pejorative terms that have been applied to our people and our society.
I heard you say that the Cyrus Cylinder is even more important in terms of governance, in terms of human rights, in terms of a freedom document than the American Constitution or even the Magna Carta.
Well, it's much older than either of them, of course, which has to be said. But the three...
But as evolved.
The three do deserve to be put together. The Cyrus Cylinder, Magna Carta, and the American Constitution, because they're all a dream of what a society could be, what a society should be. And they're all dreams that the different countries have fallen away from.
It's really addressed to Marduk. It's not addressed to the citizenry at all, and it's written on the exterior. And it was meant to be buried under the foundations of a building that was either being built or was being restored by a king. And that tradition was thousands of years old. Yeah, the question of how and why the Shah used the Cyrus Cylinder for his own political or ideological purposes is a very important one. To draw a line between himself, kind of imply a direct lineage, as it were, between the Pahlavi dynasty and Cyrus the Great.
So it's not surprising that when the Shah in 1971 wanted to celebrate 2,500 years of the monarchy in Persia, Cyrus and the cylinder were at the heart of it. And a copy of it is presented to the United Nations. And it's presented as the Charter of Human Rights.
Exactly then how he or his advisors came up with this idea that the Cyrus Cylinder is a proclamation of human rights, I don't really know. But I think from my perspective and the perspective of most scholars, nobody would have any problem with such a an interpretation if that's what it said in the text. But the text doesn't say that.
I wouldn't necessarily call it the first human rights charter. You know, it doesn't say you have the right to, you know, every country can be free, people can be free. I mean, it's still a very hierarchical society.
Sometimes the cylinder is called First Declaration of Human Rights. That's actually a bit misleading because the whole concept of human rights as we understand it nowadays didn't exist in the ancient world at all.
If one compares the authoritative translation of Irving Finkel from the British Museum with that that's on display in the United Nations, you just see that whole sentences and slabs of text are just made up in this so-called Charter of Human Rights version that just don't exist in the text.
Why are there so many interpretations of the Cyrus Cylinder? What do they reveal about us as a community? In the end, it seems that our presentation of the Cyrus Cylinder says more about us, about our desires for the cylinder to be more than it actually is, than about the artifact itself and its historical accuracy.
چیزی که برای من خیلی هیجان انگیزه در مورد منشور کوروش ارتباطش با دنیای امروزه. در این مورد خیلی دلم میخواد که با آدمای هم نسل خودم که در این شهر زندگی میکنن صحبت کنم.
این شیء تاریخی چیز مهمی است. تو به این شیء که نگاه میکنی میدونی که همان مثلا امپراتور در اون زمان به این شیء نگاه کرده. یعنی همین فسینیشن، همین اعجاز تاریخی که از پس قرنها یک شیئی باقی مونده که نسل‌ها و نسل‌ها و نسل‌ها انسان به اون نگاه کردن. یه قسمتی از علاقه به همچین شیئی به خاطر همینه، به خاطر نگه داشتن رابطمون با تاریخ تمدن بشره.
ببین، اولین چیزی که به ذهنم میرسه در مورد منشور کوروش اینه که تو کتابای تاریخ، حالا دقیقاً یادم چه سالی، ما این رو خوندیم و عکسش رو دیدیم و فهمیدیم که روش یه سری حقوق اولیه انسان‌ها نوشته شده و اصلا بهش فکر شده.
کمتر کسی چیزی واقعا میدونه که چی بوده، داستان چی بوده، ربطش با ما چیه.
زعم بعضی از محققین این منشور رو به عنوان اولین سند حقوق بشر در تاریخ حساب میکنن.
اشتباه بگیم حقوق بشر، ربطی به حقوق بشر نداره. یه سری قوانینه برای اینکه توی بتونی مدنیت داشته باشی. خب برای اینکه توی یه سیستم شهری بخوای زندگی کنی، یه سری قوانین میذاره.
آدم نمیتونه تصور بکنه که طبیعت آدم‌ها اینقدر عوض شده باشه. اون موقع یعنی جنگ نبوده، اون موقع سوء استفاده از انسان‌ها نبوده، اون موقع همه چیزی که ما الان دور خودمون می‌بینیم نبوده.
به نظر من یه چیز دروغی هیچ وقت پایدار نمیمونه که فقط الکی نوشته باشن یا ثبتش کرده باشن ولی واقعی بین مردم رواج پیدا نکرده باشه. این حقا هیچ وقت اینقدر سینه به سینه نمیگرده و پایدار بمونه.
کوروش جالبش اینه که اولین آدمیه که انگار بیاد یه امپراتوری درست میکنه، یعنی توی دنیای باستان امپراتوری درست میکنه. میدونی اینش جالبه، یعنی یه مفهوم جدیدی رو میاره.
ببین تاریخ یک احساس هویت و امنیتی میتونه بده،
ولی به نظر من در این حال با یک شیئی مثل منشور کوروش نمیتونم یه همچین رابطه رو برقرار بکنم.
حس میکنم یه فاصله‌ای بین ما و این شعر پیش اومده و دوست دارم ببینم چرا.
راستش رو بگم خیلی اصلا به این شعر فکر نکردم، یعنی واقعا جز بدبختیمه جمع نبندم که ما خیلی، یعنی من خیلی بنظری کافی واقعا به گذشتم فکر نکردم.
چرا؟ به خاطر اینکه دنیای باستان رو، جغرافیای دنیای باستان رو نمیتونم با جغرافیای دنیای امروز هماهنگ بکنم.
بعضی وقتا فکر میکنم که چقدر مگه مهمه، یعنی اینکه این مهم بودنه رو هم باز ماییم که داریم برای خودمون مهم میکنیم.
مثلا هر نسلی و هر آدمی از هر جای دیگه ای بود همین حس رو داشت که ما داریم، یا اینکه چون تاریخ ما دچار هزاران فراز و نشیب شده این الان مثلا توی این نسلیم فضا و حس پیش اومده.
من فکر می‌کنم اتفاقات تاریخی که داشتیم تو این حسی که ساخته برای ما بی تأثیر نبوده.
در تاریخ ما یه اتفاقایی افتاده، خب چه خوب که این نقاط دونسته شه و به هم وصل بشه. خب ما کمتر این اتفاق افتاده، یعنی کمتر این تأمل شده، یعنی چی؟ آدمو حساسیت آدمو میاره پایین. این راهی که ما رفتیم، این در واقع راهی که ما نرفتیم.
چیزی که در واقع یه تاریخی بهش بسته است یا یه مفهومی بهش وصله، به نظرم اون چیز رو دیدنی نمی‌کنه. اون مفهوم است که در واقع ارزشمندتره.
یه چیزی هم خیلی جالبه، یه چیزی که هست اینه که بابل شبیه نیویورک بوده. یعنی که چرا میگم؟ به خاطر اینکه یه شهری بوده که توش امنیت بوده و آزادی. به خاطر همین این شهر رونق داشت. یعنی توی طول تاریخ بشر همینه، هر شهری که تونسته امنیت و آزادی رو بده مرکز تلاقی فرهنگ‌ها و آغازی تمدن میشه. بابل این حالت رو داشته، یعنی از همه اقوام اونجا بودن، مرکز جهان بوده، قدرت و ثروت اونجا بوده و امنیت بوده. بعد مثلا نیویورک هم الان همین حالت داره، یعنی به خاطر اینکه امنیتی که تثبیت شده جایی شده که همه بتونن بیان. برای همین خیلی جالبه، میتونه یک نمادی از اینجا باشه.
It is not a day for politics.
فرمان کوروش بزرگ که بر استوانه‌ای از گل پخته نوشته شده در حدود 130 سال پیش در بابل کشف گردید و اکنون در دنیا
Victims of the violence are black and white.
من در اندیشه ایمنی شهر بابل و
ببین رأس 4 تو ایستگاه میبینمت. خداحافظ.
نگذاشتم رنج و آزاری به مردم این سرزمین واقع آید. من بردهداری را برانداختم، شهرهای ایران را آباد کردم و مردمان آباده را به خانه های خود بازگرداندم. فرمان دادم که همه مردم در پرستش خدای خود آزاد جامعه‌ای آرام مهیا ساختم و